the city council, city of Grantville, into a special call meeting to discuss the financial condition of the city. Ms. Hines, if you would lead us in an invocation, and then if we could stand for that, and then after she completes that, if you remain standing, join me in the pledge.
Let us pray. Our Father and our strong God, we come this evening in the holy, righteous, matchless, everlasting name of Jesus. We come, Father, to say thank you for this day, and thank you for your loving kindness and all of your tender mercies. We thank you, our Father, for your guidance and your provision day by day. We thank you that you are the one and only true and living God. And so, Father, we trust you and we acknowledge you, and we ask you to direct us in all that we say and do. And Holy Spirit, we just thank you for being present with us today and always, and we welcome you into this meeting. We ask that you have thine own way, so that when we leave here, we will be better than when we came. We thank you and we ask it all in the holy name of Jesus. And all the believers who believes in Jesus said amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, like I say, the purpose of the meeting is to discuss the city's finances and what brought this about. I had several people talk to me either in person, some of them took the time to call me because they've been seeing things about the financial situation here in the city. So I've asked our city accountant, James Edgar, to come tonight and go over the city's financial situation.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to come and discuss the city's finances. And from my understanding it's not just the city's finances position right now, but a lot of people are curious about the past and the historical information. So what I did, I had my staff go back to the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2011, and brought the information forth from 2011 through the 2018 year. And the information that we pulled together came off the audited financial statements. So these are the numbers that the city has hired an external organization to audit, and they have asserted that these numbers are correct. The only thing that we had to compile for these reports here that didn't come from those audited financials had to do with the payroll related items, the HR cost, and we had to take those straight from the underlying records of the city's books for each year. If you want to turn, let's start with, my understanding is there was concern about the available cash that the city had. If you'll turn to the first page in the pamphlet that I have provided for you, we show the cash and cash equivalents based on the audited financial statements as of September 30th of each year, starting at 2011 through 2018. And on the total column on the far right-hand side shows the total, which includes the governmental activities and the business type activities. The business type activities being your utilities and your solid waste disposal. You will note that in 2011, the cities had cash balances of $1,762,069, according to the audited financial statements. And if you look down to the 2018, September 30th, 2018, that number had grown to $3,626,450. The governmental activities during that time period went from $1,232,620 down to $276,936. The business activities were trending in the other direction, went from $529,449 and increased to $3,349,604. Prior to coming over here this afternoon, I went to the city's books and looked at my staff has reconciled the bank accounts through April 30th of this year. And so I pulled those numbers to see, and currently, as of April 30th, in your governmental funds, you have a little over $4.4 million in those cash accounts. Now, that doesn't mean that you can compare that 4.4 million to these numbers here. And the reason for that is that the revenues coming into the city are not consistent 12 months out of the year. You have a significant bump up in revenues in the December, January timeframe. And then I guess you could say you earn your money early in government, and then you live off of it during the lean times in the summer and into the fall. So more than likely, by September 30th of 19, the cash balances in the city will be somewhere 3.7, 3.8 million. So as you can see, the city is not desolate and it's not running out of money. But there are some things that I wanted to point out as we were going through the process of determining and analyzing the city's finances historically from 2011 through 2018. If you'll turn to the next page, my staff put together some the pie charts and some graphs. The mayor said that some of the council may prefer to see a visual, so we decided to put these in here. This page here is showing for the years 2011 and 2013, and then this is the top pie chart. The second one down is the years 2014 through 2018 on an average. Now, the reason we chose to split the years that way, there was a significant change in the city's expenditures and expenses between the fiscal year 2013 and the fiscal year 2014, and I'll explain that a little bit further later on. But as you can see here, and the reason we showed the employee cost in any municipal government, employee cost is going to be your largest expense. It doesn't matter if you're Atlanta, it doesn't matter if you're Grantville, Georgia, New York City. The payroll and payroll-related items is always the largest in municipal governments. In the 3 years, 2011 through 13, you can see the blue part of the pie chart there is 40.18% of the city's expenditures went toward payroll and payroll-related items. The 14 to 18 year showed an increase of 4.3% of overall expenditures to 44.54 was being expended on payroll costs. So that indicates that the largest increases that y'all were seeing during that time period is associated with the payroll and payroll-related items. On the next page, we got the bar charts, the graphs for the employee cost, and showing the average employee cost 2011 through 2013 was $789,310, and that increased from the 14 through 18 period to $1,096,821. So that's a total increase from the first period to the second period that we're looking at here of around $307,000 per year. And your total expenses increased $483,000 during that same period. So the total increases on your governmental expenses, 63% of that increase is associated with employee costs. Now on the next pie chart on the next page is, and the reason we pulled the public safety to look at is because it showed the largest increase as far as any sector or any activity that the city had. And what you're showing for the years 2011 through 2013, we're averaging 43.29% of the total city governmental activities was related to public safety. In the years 2014 through 2018, that amount increased by 6.61% to 49.9% of all your governmental activity was associated with public safety. So that's when we were looking at it, that's where we saw the largest increase in the overall increase in the city's expenditures during these periods. On the next page is the chart showing the numbers. The public safety in the 2011-2013 time period was averaging $850,404 per year. From the 2014 to 2018 period, that increased to $1,231,429, showing a total increase of $381,025 in public safety from one period to the next, with your total expenditures increasing $483,354. So what that shows is the total increase in your governmental activities between the first period 11 through 13 and the second period 14 through 18 accounts for 78.8% of the total increase in your governmental activities. Now y'all can stop me at any time that you want to ask any questions. I know I'm running through a lot of numbers real fast. Now let me explain what transpired between fiscal year 13 and the fiscal year 14. It's the reason we chose that as an area to split the two periods, because one of them is 3 years, the other's 5 years. The increase from the first period to the second period was associated with the police department increase from 10 employees to 16 officers. And plus there was an additional raise during that year. The utilities increased from 16 to 17 employees. So all total you had 7 additional employees on the payroll, plus an across the board pay raise. And this chart here on the next page shows the expenditures comparison from the previous fiscal years. And it shows on the top line is your governmental type activities. Now when we're talking about governmental type activities, a lot of people refer to that as your general fund, which will include the police department, it includes Parks and Rec, your street department, and all those type activities. And these business type activities on the second row down, and that's going to be your water, sewer, electric, gas, and your solid waste. And as you can see, we didn't pay a lot of attention to the business type activities because as we were looking at them, there wasn't a real significant increase between the first period and the second period. To give you an example, in 2011 you had $2,681,000 in expenditures for the business type activities. And when you jump over to 2018, you're looking at $2,723,890. What I would consider a reasonable change in the expenditures for that, for the different activities that are associated there. On the other hand, if you eliminate the 2011, which the government activities had a 2.3 million, but if you look at the 12 and 13 years, where they look fairly similar, you had a 1.8 million and 1.8 million. And then it jumped up in 2014 to over 2.2 million, and it continued on for the rest of the periods at least 2.2 million or greater. And when I do the comparison of the two, and then on the next page, the salary comparison for the years, year by year. Again, on the business activities in 2011, your total cost of employment or employees was $402,000, and in 2018, you have $409,000. Not a great change in the numbers from one end of the spectrum to the other. But on your governmental activities, you started out in 2011 with just a little bit under $800,000, and then when you look over here at the 2018, you got $1,183,000. Now, that's a lot of information that I've thrown at y'all in a short period of time, and I'm not saying that it's a good thing or a bad thing to increase your public safety. This is just what the numbers were showing when we were looking at them, because what we were trying to do is to explain why the governmental activities was losing money. And then we looked over here, and the utilities, the business type activities, it's making money. And so we had already discussed with Mr. Bishaber and the mayor about having a meeting to get together to discuss the allocation of resources that are being utilized by both the business activities and by the governmental activities. To kind of give you an example, well, let's use people in the front office. They're getting, the utilities are being charged on some of them 20%, some 30% of their cost to the utilities. And the other 70% is being charged to the governmental activities. In reality, your staff up there in that front office is probably spending well over 50% of their time doing the business of the utilities and not the business of the general government. Betty Ann has indicated that it may be as much as 75% of her time is spent taking care of the utilities. And that we've got a meeting scheduled for July the 10th, if I'm not mistaken, to discuss looking at allocating the resources that are being utilized by both the general government and the utilities to see if we can come up with a more equitable formula to allocate those expenses. And what that's going to do, that's going to reduce the expenses in general government and increase the expenses in the utilities. But overall, it won't change the total expenses. It's just how you're recognizing. Does that make sense?
Doesn't make sense.
Is there anything else that, Mayor, that y'all needed to know tonight?
Anything? You got any questions?
Well, this may be a question or a concern, however, or a statement, however you want to take it.
Okay.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, the police department has 16 officers. I think 13 regular and 3 part-time. And please correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure about the exact numbers.
Is that right?
You're correct.
But then are you saying the police department is costing more than any other department?
Yes, by far. By far. Now, that doesn't, like I said, that doesn't mean that that is bad.
That is what?
That doesn't mean that's a bad thing, that doesn't mean that's a good thing. It's just, these are what the numbers are showing, is that almost 50% of the general government expenses that was recorded in your audits over the past 5 years was associated with public safety, which doesn't just include, now let's be sure, it does not just include the police department. It includes your fire protection that you have to pay the county for. That's where it shows up on your financial statements. That's why we call it public safety. And your code enforcement, I think, is also included under that category. Does that help you any?
It does. We just have to look at how much is one versus the other. The safety, fire department versus the police department. And, we're just a concern.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good concern, and, truth be told, whether you look at the police department, rec department, what you want to look at is what outcome do we want and how much is it going to cost us? It's a cost benefit sort of situation. Right now it's costing you, let's see, that last, let's see. It's in the excerpts in the back. All of these, the back 25 or so pages is where most of this information came from. And the reason I included it was if y'all wanted to dig deeper into the numbers that the financial statements show, to kind of give you an idea, looking, it says page 5 under the 2018 statement of activities, and it shows that your public safety that year was $1,415,377. So now you know what you spent for that fiscal year for public safety. Now, it's possible you could feel like that the city needs more protection, or you could say this is exactly where we want to be. It's my understanding that, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't y'all get an award or something for being fifth, or?
We're the eighth safest city in the metro Atlanta area.
Now, if that is a goal that y'all want to attain, and it takes 1.4 million, then it's not a bad thing, is it? And you got to look at the cost benefit. If you want to give you an example. If you wanted to feel 100% safe, everybody's safe in Grantville, you could probably figure out a way to spend enough money to have a policeman on every corner so you could feel safe. But the cost benefit would probably weigh toward the cost is too much for the benefit that you'd realize. You have to find a happy median, I guess you could say, with just about anything, whether it's Parks and Rec, Street Department, or public safety.
Well, I voice my concern because I've had citizens to approach me about the police department, the number of policemen we have, and what it's costing the city and all of that. My response to those people were, I believe our citizen needs to feel safe in this city, and or in any city. And I I'm in accord with maybe having a retreat just for the mayor, manager, city council, just to see what need or should or could be done. But presently, I'm for all safety for our citizens, because, you know, personally, if I call the police, and I hope I never have to, that they can come, you know. And so it was just a concern, so we can take back to the concerned citizen who had a concern.
Right, right. Well, you want a citizen's body that is concerned about the way you're spending your money, or their money, because if you have citizens that are concerned, then you will probably, as a council, do the best job for them. If the citizens quit asking and inquiring, and let y'all just do whatever you want without any feedback from them, I doubt very seriously if you're gonna provide them what they really want without knowing it.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. I've got a list of questions. These are questions that, as mayor of the city, citizens have come and asked me about. So I'll ask the same question of you, and if you can give an answer, I'd appreciate it. If you can't, you can't do it. But before I get started, Al, he's put out a lot of numbers. Are these books available to the public if they want a copy of them?
Certainly, we can make copies for the public. We don't have any extra right now. I've given one to Laurel from the Noonan Times Herald, but that was our only extra copy.
Okay, thank you.
But we can make copies for anybody that requests it.
All right. Question number one. There's been some talk about transfers from utility funds to the general fund occurring about every year. And, you know, we're looking at several thousands of dollars. And I know you touched on about how we allocate the city's employees' time, that they work, spend so much time on utilities. That money, that part of their salaries and benefits should be charged to the utilities. And the question that comes to me is, can the city operate as a city with the utilities without allocating that money from the utilities back to pay for the thing?
Well, you gotta look at, would it be fair for, let's say the city has a good portion of its general revenues come in from property tax. Would it be fair to the property owners to burden them with paying for all of these bills that a portion should be allocated to the utilities, so that somebody that doesn't own property gets a lower water bill or a lower gas bill? And I guess that would be a way to look at it, is would it be fair to the citizens if the proper allocation of the expenses between the utilities and the general government activities doesn't occur? And a lot of those transfers, Mayor, that you're talking about there are more in the line of housekeeping transfers. I'll give you an example. There's United Bank. Okay, they write a check to United Bank. It comes out of the general fund, but has to be replaced by, let me see if I get this right now. Is that coming out of the water back to replace it? I'm trying to remember. It's either water or gas. So basically it's just housekeeping. It's because the way the system's set up, you've got to write a check to the United Bank and you got to deposit that money to cover the bond issue. Well, that bond issue has nothing to do with the general fund, it has to do with the utilities. So the
Water
money,
and sewer.
yep. And so the money, it's just a matter of replacing money that the general fund has put into the bond to pay back and forth between there, has to do with allocation of certain payroll and so items and so forth like that. It would be burdensome for the city staff to pay the state of Georgia for your state withholdings out of every different fund. So they make one payment, it comes out of the general fund, and then it has to be reallocated for the portion of that payroll tax deposit that is actually a utility employee. And those are a lot of the things that transfer. So it's not actually a true transfer in the fact that the utility made this money and then they turn around and give it to the general fund. It's just to balance the books between the activity that occurs between the utilities and the general fund.
All right, thank you. This other question I think you've already answered about any one department. Well, no, is there any department that you're aware of that is constantly going over their budgets?
I'd have to look back and see, Mayor. Every year it's this time of year that everybody starts looking to see what line items, who's gone over, who hasn't gone over. And I think we've gotten better in the past couple of years, having less overage. But it's not hard in some instances to go over, and it's not always the fault of the department head either. It could be your group health insurance goes up 10%. Nobody budgeted for that. That happened, about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago? And so all of those insurance had to be increased to cover that increased cost that was beyond the city's control. And definitely a lot beyond the department head control.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do you know what is it in these numbers, the total budget for the city?
I did not look at the total budget. Now, when you say for the city, you're talking about the general fund has a budget. And if I'm trying to go on memory now, I think it's about 2.2 million this year, if I'm not mistaken. The utilities, I'm not sure if, like, we see the SPLOST monies, the sales tax monies, those are budgeted on a 5-year plan. And so I don't recall, I don't think the council hasn't adopted an annual budget for that. So you could spend all of that money in 1 year, or you could spread it out on all the years that are available for you.
For special purpose local option sales tax, we do not prepare a budget. We only spend the money that we have in the bank.
Right.
So unless we've received it, we can't spend it. Where in a budget, you may have a line item of that amount, but with our SPLOST monies, it's pay as you go.
Right.
That's allocated like 4 times a year, isn't it? Or,
SPLOST money is received on a monthly basis.
Yes, monthly basis.
all right. Do you know whether or not revenues have increased or decreased since 2015 for the city revenue?
You're talking about the general revenues?
Yeah.
I'm sure they have increased, but not significantly. is the way I would state that. Because you did have a increase in your property tax, what was it, 2 years ago?
Okay. When it comes to, come to the city's reserve fund, is there any kind of accounting industry rule that says we should maintain a reserve or emergency funding or something like that that you're aware of?
It is good practices, but as far as I know in the state of Georgia, it is up to the council to set those amounts or percentages. Now, I may be mistaken on that because I'm not fully versed with Georgia law, but I think it lends to the council to decide how much of a reserve that you want to have.
Okay, well, based on that there is a general thing out there, do you have any idea whether we're within that range or above it or below it? I mean, as far as if an emergency hit?
Let me throw a scenario out. Are y'all familiar with the city of Jacksonville, Alabama?
I am.
Jacksonville, Alabama, here recently had a little tornado came through. It tore up Jacksonville State University. It took a good portion of the city of Jacksonville's infrastructure, their streetlights, their sidewalks. This was a massive tornado that came through the city of Jacksonville, which is, I would say, 12,000, 15,000 residents, not counting the student body that lives there. And their response teams from all over the county they were in came there. The city of Jacksonville had in reserve about what y'all have. At that point in time, they probably had between $4 and $5 million. And if you look at, when I'm talking about reserve, the numbers we talked about in here are not restricted numbers, but y'all have small amounts, 100,000 here, 200,000 in different utilities, that is reserved for major repairs. And in this case, you would probably say, okay, we got to pull that out and use it. The city of Jacksonville was up and running within 24 hours. They went and took out a line of credit at the bank for $100 million because they didn't know how much it was going to take. They never touched it. They were able to float with that money that they had on hand, what you have there, with a good portion of their infrastructure gone. And they were able to get with FEMA, get the federal dollars coming in, and they did not have to touch the line of credit.
Well, Mr. Mayor and council members and James, you remember that our Coweta County hazardous mitigation program has been adopted by the feds so that we are eligible for any grants available or assistance available through GEMA, the Georgia Emergency Management Agencies. So as you say, we may spend the money, but then we have a right to put a claim in for the money. So with our reserves that we have, and we have reserves in the MEAG Competitive Trust that we bank every year for something of the problem that Jacksonville faced, that again, we can tap as an emergency fund. That is always in the short long-term investment portfolio. As I remember, every year that I've been here, we've put about $30,000 in that, so that would give us $120,000 that we have for emergencies.
Oh. That answers that.
And that's not reflected in the numbers here tonight. That's separate and apart.
And that emergency management thing, that's something that was just recently prior to the adoption. We were not eligible for federal money, were we?
Sir, I don't know, but the Coweta County Hazardous Mitigation Study is, and I think it is good till 2024 when it has to be updated again. I don't know what the status was prior to the time I got involved with it, but I now know that we are eligible, and we have a letter from the federal government to that effect, that if we have a disaster, we are eligible for FEMA funds, Federal Emergency Management Agency, which flow through the Georgia Emergency Management Agency, and it's just a record-keeping thing, how much we spend, labor, materials, the whole bit, and then we get reimbursed. The last time it was 85% federal, 10% state, and 5% local. So if we spend $100,000, if we submit our claim and it's approved, we're liable for $5,000.
Now, this next question you may have trouble answering, but I'm gonna ask it anyway.
Okay.
And I'm recognizing you as a professional accountant. And my question is, do you have an opinion as a professional accountant whether this city is operating on a sound financial footing right now, or do you, like was stated, believe that the city is hemorrhaging money like there's no tomorrow?
I will put it to you this way. If I was doing the city's audit, which I have been asked, is there any concern? The auditors every year nowadays have to do a going concern. And what a going concern means is the city going to be able to survive the next 12 months? And if you have any concern whatsoever, Mayor, you have to pull out this checklist and go through it to see if the city financially is going to be in bad shape over the next 12 months. And every time the auditors have asked me that question, my response is, well, gee, they got enough money in the bank to cover the general fund budget right now for the next 12 months. So there is no such thing as a going concern for the city of Grantville, Georgia. We'll not have to worry about going to court and explaining why the city of Grantville is in Chapter 9, because y'all are nowhere near in dire straits like that. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. Anybody else got anything they need to ask?
No. You've given us very good insight.
Thank you.
Al, you got anything you wanna talk about?
Well, I think it's important that we emphasize that last point. We talked about a reserve fund. And although we don't have a designated reserve fund in our accounts, we have enough money in the general fund for the next 12 months. I think that speaks highly for the city's finances. We have money in the special
2018, the general fund compared to the proprietary fund. Why did it drop so much? Do we have any stats on that?
Let's see. 2018 to,
This was the proprietary fund, went down to 276,000, I think you said.
276 there.
And then the general fund was 3.6 million.
Right.
Do we know what caused that drop?
Okay. In the governmental activities, you had a drop of 955,000 from 11 to 18. And in the business type activities, you had an increase from 529,000 to 3.3 million. 3.6 was the total all.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
So you had an increase of 2.8 million in the business activities. A lot of this variance here has to do with Betty Ann being charged 20 or 30% here, 70% here.
Okay.
When in actuality, she's spending 70% of her time here and 30% of her time here. Now, that's not going to be all of it, but that's going to be a good portion of it. That's why on the 10th of July, we're going to sit down and we're going to start going through the process of analyzing the expenses. A good example, these lights here that run through this building here, every bit of that electricity is charged right here. But
Should
the
be
business-
allocated, should be
yeah,
allocated
business
per square foot
activity,
probably.
yeah, and so, it's gonna be I guess you could say it's gonna be a process.
Right.
But
How
I-
often does the city normally go through this reevaluation of allocation?
I don't think it's ever been done.
We are
No,
doing
no.
an allocation now, correct? Are you-
On certain items, some of, Mr. Bishaver's salaries is allocated, some of,
Somebody's allocated.
but
Okay.
what I was looking at, and I've been, I looked at it and said, okay, we got to do something about this because it's not equitable. Because the water, sewer, electrical, they should pay for whatever resources that they consume. And Betty Ann is a resource,
Right.
and they're not paying enough, or they're not paying enough for the resources they consume here, or Al's time, or even the mayor's time.
And I was just thinking, as you were talking, the police department is spending time, for duties really that I think should be allocated to recreation because they are involved in the 4th of July that's coming up. They're doing all of that. They've done the Easter egg hunt, Christmas, I think. And so there's those expenses that are associated with it that are probably being charged to the police department. I don't know where those charges are going to, but they really
If
could
the police
be.
department spends the money, it shows up in the police department. It doesn't matter if somebody else is benefiting from it because there's no mechanism in place, and some of them will be extremely hard to do,
Okay,
to be able to allocate it. One thing I talked to Mr. Fisher earlier, we may be able to develop what's called an overhead factor so that we don't have to track every little dime, and we can just do a very good estimate to allocate the proper amount of expense each month to the gas, to the water, to the utilities. As far as the governmental activities, whether it's the rec department or the police department, it all shows up right here in this column here.
Okay.
The governmental activities.
okay.
And what we're concerned about is showing it into the business activities so that the business activities actually paying their fair share.
And I think you were referring, Councilwoman Hines, to the budget to actual report that's being published now on a quarterly basis. That is what I think you were referring to, that could be put out on the internet. I think that would be a good idea. but as a part of that, when we bought our accounting program, there was supposed to be a program in it that tracked budget to actual, so that if a department got over its budget, it would put a quarantine on there, and it would have to have an okay.
That
Are we
system
still
is-
using that, or
It
where are
was-
we?
They tried it for a short period of time, it didn't, the bugs wasn't worked out of it, and it was set aside.
Okay, so that's not being used then.
It's bigger.
Okay,
We put out budget to actual on a monthly basis.
monthly basis, good. Okay. Debt of the city, do we have a total figure for the total debt of the city?
Not in, I could probably give it to you as September 30th. I'm glad I think of all these things. Let's see here. Total liabilities of the city, including the business activities, is, as of September 30th, 2018, $1,724,217.
Okay, and as a part of that, then we've still got this bond thing. I think it's probably running around $70,000 now for land application system, 700,000 maybe? We're still paying on that. We pay about $80-something thousand a month or quarter. I don't know how we're paying that.
Let's see, I'm trying to see here. That would be, you've got the notes payable, which is the cheaper notes. Let's see, 700,000, you're about right on that.
Okay, so,
And then you have the water bond issues, 430,000.
Okay.
September.
okay. So, every year we transfer funds from the utility fund into the general fund. Are we increasing that transfer? Are we stable on that transfer, or what is
It
the
varies.
history of that?
It varies depending on the particular activity between the utilities and so forth. But what I'm thinking is if we get this allocation properly set up so that the, those transfers from the utility to the general fund, in essence, is paying back the resources that the city has already paid for, the general fund paid for, that the utilities utilized. And what we want to do is set up a system where we can track that and be accurate on it. And at that point in time, then we will know if the utilities is subsidizing government activities, or if the government activities is subsidizing.
And so the appearance now is that the utilities are subsidizing the general
That's
fund.
correct. But until we get an accurate understanding of the resources and how they're being utilized, utility or whatever, we don't have a good handle on that until we go through the process of analyzing it.
Okay. I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wynn?
Hello, Penny Wynn, 176 Lowry. I think Ms. Cody pretty much covered what I was gonna say. It was just a suggestion to piggyback off of what Ms. Hines was saying. What you said, I think, was an awesome idea. And I was just gonna say, for people like me that really hate accounting, how about just a simple spreadsheet, pretty much, of what's going on for a simple transparency? As far as accounting, what's going on with the city, because a lot of people are, on Facebook saying that, this is something, shady going on with all the transfers and different things. So a simple breakdown of what's going on as far as the funds and how it's going, and, like I said, for people like me who hate accounting, who understand it pretty much, but yet hates it, just a simple spreadsheet. It may be a copy for when they come and do, pay the utilities, so they can pick it up and understand it more. But that's all, just a simple suggestion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wynn. Mr. Howe?
Hey there, my name is Mike Howell. I live in Branch Park. And my main thing was, we came here about accounting to understand what's going on in our city. First and foremost, not one of us people that live here in Granville got a book. That was very unprofessional to us. To sit here and listen to a man go for an hour or however long he went about numbers that are going on in the city without even getting a book. I understand that you did touch bases with that on trying to make something happen so we can get one, but after we sat here and listened to him, we should have had one prior to him even starting, because I can remember one of the numbers all day long, but it ain't gonna make no sense unless I'm sitting there looking exactly what he's talking about. Then I actually glanced over and asked the lady that has the only book out here in the audience if I can glance over it. And when I did glance over the book had a wide range of, if I picked one thing out to narrow it down to break down what that extra money's being spent for, there's no telling what it's going to. It's a wide range. Just like he stated earlier, I could take something from the general and send it to pay it, but I have to refund it from another fund. That's money that you can't track very well because you're moving money from account to account. Like I said, y'all don't spend money unless the money's there. So why ain't the money coming strictly from that account rather than from the general and then being replaced back to general? Because now it's being misplaced. I cannot track it like that. Is there any way you can elaborate on that?
Let me try to elaborate on the city's accounting system and their cash account. Their cash account is a confusing checking account, if you wanted to put it mildly. It's what's called a pooled cash account. All the money that comes in to City Hall, whether you pay your power bill, water bill, you buy a business license, you pay the county for your sales tax and it comes here, it all goes into that same checking account. It's a pooled account.
So it all goes into the general account and then it gets distributed to little branches like
It's
in PowerPoint.
accounted for, it's not distributed to branches, it's accounted for by the way the data is entered into the system. To give you an example, I remit an invoice for my services. Betty Ann there sits down at her computer and she assigns 1/14, I think it is, to each department and 1/14 to each utility. And that's how it allocates my business that I do for the city. Now, when she cuts that check, it's one check coming out of that checking account. So what you have is a pooled checking account sitting over here. It's a fund unto itself.
Goes to the general.
And it reduces the cash. And you got, let's say 7 departments in the general fund, then 7 or half of that money goes, the charges, the expenses goes into the general fund. And then the other portions go to the utilities, depending on how she keeps it in.
So
So
basically,
it's 100% tracked. There is no such thing as money getting misplaced. That's why the city every year engages an external auditor. He comes in and he tests it. He tests transactions. He tests the transfers. He tests our journal entries. He even tests to see if on the books it says you've got a brand new Ford F-150 for one of the utilities to use. He goes out there and looks at it and he verifies that it's still here. And that's what the auditor does, is he makes sure that there's no quote monkey business going on inside the books. Now, because of the fact that you have, I guess 600 accounts on the general ledger, maybe 700. that have a specific purpose. That purpose is so that you can track that expense to the police department, or that expense to the rec department, or that expense to water and gas. So it is a complicated system, and if you wanted to drill down and see, you could take and print out a general ledger. I don't know if the city charges by the sheet or whatever, you could get an entire.
Question, because it still winds up being, when you get the money, you distribute money out into different branches. If you'd have showed a PowerPoint or something like that to bring it out to our light,
Yeah.
because right now you're just throwing random numbers and examples that don't help me at all. That being said, also these things that we've done to Grantville, which is the fireworks, the attendance for that's great for the community. The splash park, I know you touched up on bases on that as well. We, as the people, do not even know the revenue of, are we making money on the splash park? Or are we spending more money than we're actually making? Because I don't know where the water goes. Does the water get recycled back in the splash park on the kids? I have no idea. But what I've heard most of, since I've been here in Grantville for 13 years, is the people want growth within the county. Is that looking anywhere in our budget and growth anywhere down the future?
That would be a question you probably need to ask council. I'm not in charge of policy.
In the time that I've been here, we've had companies come down, look at it, but generally people that are looking to locate a business, they're looking at several locations like that. Amazon, they're looking all over the United States. And a lot of factors figure in, the labor force, the available to them, the cost of running the business and whatever. There's just so many factors that so far we haven't hit that one, but I think Al will tell you, we've had meetings in the last 4 years with several things, but it just hasn't happened yet. And like I say, it's whether they can, a good business move for them or not is gonna determine that. We try to talk positive. We are open for business to locate here, but so far it just hadn't happened. But that doesn't mean it could happen tomorrow. Hopefully it will.
That's fair enough. That would help out our revenue to boost up these numbers where we wouldn't even have this discussion today, is why I mentioned that. But I guess that's all I got. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to Councilman Martin King. You got any comments?
I have two. First, I would like to thank Mr. Edgar for coming here tonight and giving us a better understanding of the city finances. It was beneficial to myself, and I believe beneficial to the better part of the audience. And I would thank you for that. And the second comment is, you can't believe everything you read on Facebook. You can't. I've seen a lot of numbers out there, and I've seen a lot of misinformation out there. It's just not true. So do your research, ask the right questions of the right people, and you'll get the right answers, as we did tonight with the mayor and with Mr. Edgar. Thank you, sir. So.
Thank you, Mark. Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Edgar. As I forestated, thank you for the insight and for coming, and we hope you'll have safe travel back to your home. And thank you, citizen, for coming. And Grantville is a great, great place to live. Thank you, that's all.
That's it. Okay, Mr. Edgar, I would again thank you for coming down and along with your wife to making sure you got here. But I do appreciate it. I hope that the citizens did get some information. May not have got all of what they wanted, but this is a beginning, and like I say, I would encourage you, I see new faces here tonight. We meet on the second and fourth Monday nights at 6:30 right here. I would encourage y'all to try to make it whenever you can, because again, I say, this is your city, it's not owned by the city council or anybody else other than you guys and girls, but, or ladies, but, I would encourage you to show up and ask the questions, like I say, call City Hall, call me, if I don't have the answers, which I don't have a lot of them, because the city manager generally deals with the day-to-day operations, but if I can get the answer, I will, and if I can't, I'll refer you to somebody that can. But I appreciate every one of y'all for coming out, and hopefully you'll come back more often. Mr. Trisha, you got any comments?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay. All right. Nothing else to come. Adjournment's in order.
Hey, can I just say one thing about Facebook? 10 seconds. You're right, you can't believe what you hear on Facebook, but you know what? You can't believe everything you hear here in this council meeting either.
What you say?
That's right.
Have a second to the adjournment?
Second.
All right. Any questions here? None, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We're adjourned. Thank y'all again for coming out. And like, Mr. Howell, this will be a, you know, like I say, I get your point, you know, it would have been nice, but
It's kind of like